Yeah, I think it's always good to try new things, especially when it comes to food.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I hope you're all doing well today.
I was just thinking about how much I've learned in the past year.
Why did you come here? Have a warning.
It's good that we can finally enjoy some good food.
Yeah, I'm glad we could get out.
I'm so glad we could finally connect. It's been too long since our last conversation.
The food is so good today.
Yes, I really like this new recipe. It's very important to keep in mind, and the main thing I would say about it is this.
Yes, I understand. We can definitely arrange for that to be delivered by tomorrow morning. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
Today I'm gonna cook some pasta, so I'm just gonna fill up
The rain hadn't yet
the
fallen,
pot with
but the
some
sky
water.
threatened with a muted gray that settled over the lumberyard like a promise.
We've been through a lot together.
Stacks of freshly delivered wood,
I know, it
30
hasn't been
tons
easy.
by estimate, stood proudly as the scent of sawdust and bark curled into the morning air. James adjusted his collar as he stepped onto the muddy earth, boots sinking slightly, eyes scanning the busy movement of workers lifting, sorting, and inspecting the cargo. Somewhere to his right, Tuan was giving orders, his voice steady but concerned. The workforce was thin, morale even thinner. After the unfortunate accident involving a man named Z, it had left everyone shaken, cautious. Now, each plank of wood carried a weight heavier than its own. Fear, uncertainty, and the pressure to carry on. James listened to Tuan's reports, his jaw tightening when the topic of staff shortages came up. Bonuses, incentives, anything to draw fresh blood. Tuan offered his solutions, and James nodded, distracted. He didn't say much. His mind was split, not just between the operations of the timber company and the fragile loyalty of his team, but something more personal, more intimate. At the back of his mind was the clock. His mother was back. No warning, no text, just a sudden presence. A surprise that left his heart confused and oddly unsettled. He remembered the call. "I'm already at the house," she had said casually. "Waiting for you." It had been years since they sat under the same roof. She had always been away, building empires overseas, making strategic alliances while he stayed behind, nurturing something more grounded, something slower, but no less meaningful. And now she was back, in the kitchen, no doubt trying to recreate the meals she used to prepare when he was a boy. The thought alone tightened something in his chest. He finished with Tuan quickly, stepping into his truck, the engine grumbling like a beast woken too early. The ride home was short, but every minute felt long as he opened the door to their family home, a wooden house carefully designed with natural finishes, the way he always liked. It was like stepping into another time. There she was, his mother, dressed immaculately even in her domestic attempts, her hair tied back, the faint scent of her old perfume merging with the aroma of freshly cooked rice. "Surprise," she had said, arms open. James hesitated only a moment before pulling her into a hug. "I missed you," he murmured, and it wasn't a lie. At the dinner table, they sat with his father, laughter attempting to fill the gaps time had carved into their conversations. His mother asked about his work, his life, and then, inevitably, his love. "I hear you have a girlfriend," she said, her tone playful, but her eyes searching. James didn't flinch, but he didn't smile either. "Her name is Deep," he said quietly. "Her life hasn't been easy, but she's strong, kind. She sees things in people, things others miss." His mother paused, her spoon clinking gently against the bowl. You always had a way of choosing what the world didn't understand, she replied, not disapprovingly, but not quite approving either. Later that night, when the dishes had been cleaned and the house quieted into a hush only old homes know, James watched his mother disappear into her room before stepping outside. The stars above the countryside looked unfamiliar, though he had seen them 100 times. Something about her presence shifted the air. The next morning, she was gone. Not entirely, but gone from the house. James returned from the lumberyard only to find a note. Gone to visit an old friend. What friend? It didn't say. He didn't think much of it. His mother had many ties in the region. But what he didn't expect was for that visit to bring her face to face with Diep. That's where things began to change. It happened at the market, where chance had no business doing what fate already planned. Diep, as always, was selling fresh produce. Honest, quiet, alone. She handed his mother change, only later realizing it was too much. And she returned it. That gesture, small and seemingly meaningless, etched something into his mother's heart. She recognized the honesty, the dignity. Something clicked, but the connection wasn't made yet. Not fully. Later, his mother stood in front of an old house, knocking with the kind of certainty that came from memory. The door opened. A woman gasped, "Jasmine!" She said, half a question, half a cry. "Nai!" his mother whispered. They embraced, 2 decades melting like frost in the morning sun. But the real surprise came when Nai called out, "Diep, come meet an old friend of mine." And in she walked, soft, unaware. The moment froze. James's mother stared. Recognition swept over her face. Diep, in her simple dress, eyes kind and posture reserved, paused only a second before nodding. "Hello," she said. Neither knew yet, but something trembled between them. That evening, James arrived at the farm. Diep greeted him with her usual warmth, but something was off. The air was too still, the silence between words too deep. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Your mother came to see me," she said at last. James blinked. "What?" "She came to visit my mother. They're old friends, it seems." James ran a hand through his hair. "Did she know?" "Not yet," Diep said. "But I think she suspects." They stood beneath the gourd trellis someone had built for her without telling. Neither of them had. They didn't know who had. A silent kindness from a third hand. Diep touched the vines gently. "I haven't told her," she said. "I can't." "You don't have to," James replied, voice low. "Not yet." But both of them knew the truth was a storm on the horizon, and it would come, whether they invited it or not. It began the next morning, with a knock at the farm gate that carried more weight than the sound should have. Diep was rinsing greens when she heard it. 2 firm knocks, spaced, deliberate. She dried her hands and stepped outside, expecting perhaps a delivery boy or a neighbor. But when she opened the gate and saw her, everything stopped. James's mother stood there not like a stranger, but like someone who had come to settle something ancient. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a long-sleeved blouse and neatly pressed trousers, her hair tied back. Her gaze was unwavering. "I believe we've met," she said as though rehearsing the words. Diep nodded slowly. "At the market," she said, "and at my mother's house." There was a pause, one that yawned wider than the space between them. "May I come in?" she asked. Diep stepped aside. The kitchen was still warm with the scent of ginger and morning rice. They sat across from each other, neither reaching for tea, neither pretending this was casual. "You didn't tell me at Nai's house," the older woman said, "but I know now. You're the girl James has been talking about." Diep didn't answer, but her silence was its own confirmation. "I owe you an apology," she continued, "for not recognizing you sooner, for not understanding. There's nothing to apologize for. Diep said softly. There is, she insisted. Because I judged you. Not out loud, not directly, but in my heart. I thought James would choose someone different, someone better. Diep finished for her, her voice steady. The older woman didn't deny it. Yes, she said, but I was wrong. The admission hung in the air, raw and unadorned. You returned my money, she said. That's how I knew. Most people wouldn't, but you did. And when I looked into your eyes, I saw it. The same thing I saw when I first met your mother. Dignity, quiet strength. Diep looked down. I didn't want you to know who I was. Not like this. Why? Because I'm not proud of everything in my past. And I didn't want James to choose between us. He won't have to, she said. I'm not here to take him from you. I came to understand what kind of woman he gave his heart to. Diep met her eyes, and I see why, she replied. James arrived just after noon, unaware. He stepped into the kitchen, paused at the sight of the two women, and for a moment, his breath caught. You're here, he said to his mother. Yes, she said, and so is she. They talked awkwardly at first, but the ice had already cracked. What followed was a conversation that might have never happened if not for the randomness of a market stall. His mother admitted to fears, not of Diep's past, but of losing the version of James she thought she knew. You're not the boy I raised, she said. You've grown into something more grounded, more difficult to read. I didn't know if that was a good thing. It is, he said, because of her. They stayed until late afternoon. When his mother left, she hugged Diep. It was not warm, but it was real. That night, the air at the farm shifted. James and Diep sat on the porch, watching fireflies blink into life. I didn't expect that, he said. Me neither, she whispered. But I'm glad it happened. The peace didn't last long. 2 days later, the man known only as Mr. Fan arrived. He was a former associate of James's mother, tall, elegant, with eyes that missed nothing. He asked to speak privately, but James refused. Say what you came to say, he told him, but say it in front of her. Mr. Fan looked at Diep with something between curiosity and calculation. I came with an offer, he said. There's a project in Jalat, high-end agriculture, greenhouses, distribution. Your mother wanted you to lead it, but after hearing of your distractions, she thought it best I handle it. James stiffened. You mean my relationship is a threat to your investment? I mean, Fan said coldly, that emotions make poor business partners. Diep stood. I think it's best I leave. James caught her wrist. No, he said. Stay. He turned back to Fan. Tell my mother I'm not interested. Not if this is the price. You're making a mistake, Fan warned. You're underestimating me, James replied. Fan left without another word. That night, Diep packed a bag. James found her folding clothes into it, her back rigid. What are you doing? He asked. Leaving, she said. Because of him? Because of what it means, she said, turning. James, I'm not worth a family war. I'm not worth your future burning down. You don't get to decide that, he said. This is my choice, and I'm choosing to go before it hurts you more. Then I'll go with you, he said simply. Her hands stopped moving. Don't say that unless you mean it. I've never meant anything more. They didn't sleep that night. They stayed on the porch, watching the night crawl across the hills, listening to the farm breathe in silence. In the morning, there was a message on James's phone from his mother. Just one line. I was wrong. Come see me. He went alone. Diep waited. Hours passed. When he returned, he said only, "She understands now." They never spoke of Fan again, but the damage he tried to cause lingered, like a bruise beneath the skin. A week later, a new greenhouse arrived, paid for by James's mother. A gift. No strings, just soil and possibility. Diep didn't cry when she saw it, but her hands trembled. Together, they built something new, not just out of wood and glass, but out of trust, apology, and the decision to begin again. It began not with a confession, but with silence, the kind that stretches across days like a fog, soft but heavy, pressing on every breath. After the greenhouse was installed, after the workers left and the tools were packed away, James and Diep found themselves caught in a kind of waiting, not for something external, but for the internal walls to come down. They moved through the days like dancers in different songs, parallel, but not quite touching. She noticed the way he checked his phone more often, how he stared longer out the window after a call with his mother. He noticed how she avoided eye contact when he brought up the future. When he said, "we," she blinked but didn't answer. It wasn't distance, it was fear. Fear of what might come if they dared to hope too much. Fear of ghosts that hadn't yet spoken. And then one morning, Diep found a letter tucked under her pillow. James's handwriting, neat and deliberate. It wasn't long. It simply said, "Whatever we are, I'm all in. But if you're still afraid, I'll wait until you're ready to walk through this storm with me." She folded the letter and kept it in her apron pocket for days, touching it with her fingers when she felt herself drifting too far. And then, the storm came. Literally and metaphorically. A typhoon rolled in from the coast, tearing through the trees, flooding the lowlands, and threatening to uproot everything they'd built. The greenhouse cracked in 2 places. The crops were nearly drowned. They spent 2 full days without power, sleeping side by side in the common room, using candles and boiling water over firewood. And in that crisis, something shifted. Diep was different. She took charge, coordinating neighbors, calling for supplies, comforting frightened children. James followed her lead without ego. He watched as she moved through chaos with purpose, like someone born not to be saved, but to save others. On the 3rd night, after they had patched the last leak and set up makeshift beds for a displaced family, James found her sitting alone beneath a collapsed banana tree. He knelt beside her, his clothes soaked, his hands muddy, and simply said, "I've never loved anyone like I love you." She didn't speak. Instead, she leaned into him, their foreheads touching, her breath shallow against his jaw. "I'm tired of being afraid," she whispered. "Then let's stop," he replied. They kissed then, soft, desperate, affirming. Not the beginning of a romance, but the anchoring of it. What followed were weeks of rebuilding, not just structures, but trust. James's mother returned, this time with suitcases. She didn't say it aloud, but the implication was clear. She wasn't leaving. She wanted to live among them, to become part of this life, not control it. At first, Diep resisted. Old wounds heal slow, and forgiveness is never a switch. It's a series of silent decisions, made over breakfast, over laundry, over conversations that don't feel important until they are. Slowly, the walls came down. James's mother offered to help with finances, and Diep declined. "We're fine," she said. "We'll build it ourselves." The older woman didn't argue. She smiled. "That's why I trust you." One day, a letter arrived. Official, sealed, from the city. It was an invitation to a business summit, addressed to CEO James, offering a keynote opportunity. James hesitated. Diep encouraged him. "You don't have to choose between your world and this one," she said. "We can build a bridge. So they traveled together back to the city that once threatened to pull them apart. The reception was cold at first. James's colleagues eyed Diep with skepticism, some whispering about her origins, her accent, her clothes. But Diep didn't flinch. When asked about her work, she answered with clarity, dignity, and precision. She spoke of sustainability, of local economies, of community-first strategies. The room fell quiet. When she finished, the applause was genuine. Afterward, a female executive approached her privately and said, "You don't belong in the shadows. You belong at the table." James watched from afar, pride swelling in his chest. That night, in the hotel room, he offered her something he hadn't before. A choice. "Come with me," he said. "Let's build this. Together. A company. A future. A life." Diep looked at him for a long time, then said, "Only if we never stop coming back here." And she held his hand against her heart. They returned to the countryside days later, greeted by neighbors like returning royalty, not because of wealth, but because of something far rarer. Integrity. They expanded the greenhouse, hired workers, started a cooperative. Diep taught local women how to grow medicinal herbs. James opened a school for sustainable farming. Together, they built something generational. And then, one late autumn morning, as golden leaves fell gently from the persimmon trees, Diep found herself sitting on the porch with James's mother. "I was wrong about you," the older woman said. "No," Diep replied. "You just didn't know me yet." They laughed. It was real. Months passed. Diep became pregnant. James cried when he found out, burying his face in her belly like a man who had never known joy until that moment. They named their daughter Lynn, meaning spirit. She was born in spring, during the first harvest of their most abundant season yet. The whole village celebrated. And in the quiet of the nursery, as Diep held her daughter close, James whispered, "This is what we were meant to build." Years later, people would speak of their love story, not as a fairy tale, but as a lesson that love is not lightning, but light, that it burns not with fury, but with faith, that family is not always blood, but choice, and that sometimes the life you dream of begins not in grand gestures, but in the simple act of staying, through storms, through silence, through soil and sweat and the stubborn will to believe in one another even when it hurts. This was not a happy ending. It was a beginning, a life, a legacy, and above all, a truth that in the face of the hardest things, loss, judgment, fear, the only answer worth choosing is love.